What is up, gamers? Welcome back to another Predecessor gameplay video. Zinx just got announced, so let's get right into her build guide. As always, timestamps will be down in the description, but we're gonna start off with her build guide. Of course, it's going to be a support build guide because so far that's the only role that I will see her kind of make sense. I know there could be some people cooking on some ADC Zinx alongside like a Richter with the pull and the stun, and because of her passive it's pretty good to like kind of auto attack. And I can also see it maybe in mid lane, although the RB might be a little bit useless, but this will only be on the support role. So let's get into the items that kind of fit Zinx. Small note before we do get started, it's not going to be a cold crest that you're going to go for. You're going to go for one of the support crests. I just mistakenly picked this by mistake. It's usually going to be one of the crests that the supports pick, either the cleanse, either the heal. The heal is probably the best one if I had to be honest, but the cleanse also kind of makes sense. Or you can also go the silence, which also kind of makes sense. As for first item, you kind of want to go Marshall. The reason you want to go Marshall is so you can auto attack a bit faster. That 15% attack speed is going to allow you to basically stack your passive a lot faster. You can see at 5 stacks, we already got that passive. We're moving much faster. You can see my the move speed I have on the hero. I'll get into her passive very shortly, but let's go back to finishing this build. Another option for a first item, which would be a more aggressive first item, would actually be Cresselia, which completely makes sense if you want to be more aggressive, try to win lane. And if you don't have a hero, if you have a hero like Revenant in the Duolane, which doesn't really benefit with Marshall, you might want to go Cresselia instead. The main reason is, again, because Marshall doesn't really benefit Rev, but also this is actually a bit more damage than Marshall is, if you just want to go straight up damage with abilities. And of course an auto attack in between. But if you want to play for your passive and try to space the enemy dual lane correctly or just run him down, Marshall might still be your best option. And basically you just choose one of these two. You can also build both if I'm being honest, but try to pick one of these two and see what better fits your first item of choice. Second item is actually going to be Lunaria. I believe Lunaria is actually one of the best items on her, not only because it kind of increases your healing on the RMB. She is one of those heroes that is, honestly, she is the only healer in the game that actually does quite some damage. And so you can see me stacking Lunaria pretty easily. Of course, my abilities are level 1, but you can see how easy it is to stack it. And how easily it is to consume that Lunaria stack on the Muriel, for example. Unfortunately, I cannot really heal her because she is full health, so the Lunaria won't get used, but you can easily stack it with this hero. It's one of her best items, so you definitely want to pick it up by second item, not later but then third for sure, because Lunaria is a very good early game item. It does fall off a bit more down the game, but it's not that massive fall off. But it's just, I'm mainly saying this just so you guys know it's a better early game item than majority of the other items that we're going to be counting into this build. If you want to keep going with a move speed style build, you have two options. You have Windcaller, you have Galaxy Greaves. Both items are very good. Both items give you move speed. This one gives you move speed out of combat. This one gives you move speed when you heal somebody from the passive called Zephyr. Both really good. I do recommend both items actually in a final build. I don't recommend it third and fourth. Of course, you can probably do something like, you kind of want to get Galaxy Greaves when you want to jump over some of the enemy abilities, like a Decker Cage, like a Drongo Gag Grenades, like a Bellica Stun, like a Steel Ultimate, and a bunch of other abilities, right? Abilities like those, that's when Galaxy Greaves becomes very useful. If you don't need to do that, and if you want to just have more uptime on getting some move speed, you can honestly opt for Windcaller instead. It gives you magical power. It's a more offensive item, so if you guys are already winning the game and you want to go for more one-shots, you can obviously opt in for Windcaller over Galaxy Greaves. But if you want to be more evasive and just have a bit more freedom on how you navigate the team fight, I do recommend Galaxy Greaves as well. Now, if we're excluding all the move speed items, one of the better items to build is actually Tainted Scepter for the anti-heal, although it did get nerfed for supports because you do go a lot of magical power on this hero. This item is still going to be very good, and it's also going to give you some nice health. Anti-heal is very valuable. Even if you don't need anti-heal, sometimes the item just does a lot of damage, so it's still a good pickup overall, but usually you will always need anti-heal by third item, so it's always going to be a good pickup. Fourth item that you should consider if you don't need one of the move speed items that I've mentioned is actually Spiral Breaker. Very good into something like a Richter Hook, into a Decker Stun, or a lot of AP. I do recommend both of these items, but as well do not forget about the items I said earlier, that being Windcaller and Galaxy Greaves. One more item that is worth mentioning is actually Dynamo. If you're playing into a lot of tanks, making sure that they take 8% more damage upon immobilizing someone with your Q is very, very good. So if you're playing front to back, that means you take care of the front line first and then the back line second, which is something that Zinx is really well at doing because of the way her stun works. Dynamo becomes really good. Of course, Dynamo also gives you magical power when you have more AP. Now, a more offensive item would be something like Roadkeeper. Although I don't really recommend this item, it can be good for quite some uptime and also just to weave in auto attacks in between your abilities. I don't think this is as good, so definitely don't recommend it over this other item that I'm going to recommend to you guys, and that is Time Warp. Much more uptime on your abilities. It's going to be very, very good of an item. It also gives you a lot of base mana regen, one of the strongest items you can possibly build. I'm going to finish this one particular build with Galaxy Greaves, just so I can basically navigate the team fight a little bit better. But again, if you don't want Galaxy Greaves, if you don't think you need Galaxy Greaves, you can go Windcaller. And again, if you don't need Spellbreaker, you could have possibly gone something like this right here, and even Galaxy Greaves right here, and do something like this as well. You have quite some options on what to build on your last 4 item slots, so definitely try to consider, again, one of these items. Dynamo, Windcaller, Galaxy Greaves. Cresselia is also pretty good, and then I of course recommend the mage items that are Tainted Scepter and also Spellbreaker. Some people will be like, what about Astral? I think it can work, but definitely not one of the preferred items on here, of course. And also do not forget about Time Warp. Sorry, do not also forget about Time Warp. Time Warp is a very wonderful item as well on her. Alright, so this is the full build I'm going to go with. It is the most offensive build you can go with on a Zinx support. Now, in terms of abilities, I would say you want to max your E first, or you at least put 2 more points into your E. So that means you put 3 points into your E and then you max RMB, or you just straight up max E and then you max RMB second. Let's talk about what the E does and move from there. Right, the E is as simple as just small area on the ground. It does damage when you hit it once, and then it does damage again when it explodes. I'll give you an example here on the steel. Some damage on the slow, and a damage again, and I think it reapplies the slow. Something worth noting about the E, if you per se miss the E on the steel like this, but he walks in before the explosion goes off, he will actually take damage if he goes into it. He will take the initial damage of the E. So that initial damage, there you go, that 138 you saw first, he will take it if somebody walks into this. And then, of course, he will take the remaining damage, which would be the 249 if he stays in it and also explode. So even though you don't hit them with the initial burst, if people walk into this, they will take damage. The second ability you want to max is your RMB. What does the RMB do? It's basically a single target heal. You basically target someone that is your ally and only your ally. You cannot target yourself, and you basically just heal them. Unfortunately, this guy is full health, so it doesn't really work out well for us. But there is something important about this RMB. There's 2 different things. One, they will get double the healing based on their missing HP. So the more missing HP they have, they will get more of a heal. And the second one is you also will heal them more if you're proccing your passive. I will tell you guys what the passive is in a second after this, but basically I've procced my passive. You see me moving fast, that is my passive, but my passive has some other things that I will also mention. And that would also increase your healing when you have your passive up and going. Finally, what the RMB also does, it gives you on hits on your damage. As you can see, that magical number, that is the on hit from my passive, and it scales with the amount of points you also put on your RMB. So it's kind of a nice additional damage on Zinx, and it kind of allows her to run people down. Again, you can max this ability second, or you max it after putting only 3 points into the E, because this ability is actually pretty potent early game in the lane, and it also becomes very nuts alongside your passive and when people are low. So now let's quickly talk about the passive. As you can see in the top right, you gain stacks upon damaging an enemy hero. Now, do you gain stacks from your E? Yes, you gain 2 stacks. Do you gain stacks from your Q? Yes, you gain 1 stack, and also you also gain more depending on how many things you hit. Of course, the person you hit has to be a hero. It says it has to be an enemy hero. So if with the Q, we all know that the Q bounces. If you hit multiple heroes with the Q, that would count towards 1 more stack towards your passive. Because I cannot get more than 1 hero in the practice, though, this is kind of how it looks when it bounces. The second part of her passive is that when you are fully stacked, you become empowered. What does empowered mean? Empowered means that you start gaining move speed. As you can see, I am running much faster, and also more importantly, your heal does more healing on your ally. Of course, we can not see it unfortunately because this guy is not healed again, but it does say it in the description that it restores 50% more health. So that is 1.5x the normal value, which is 311. You gain 50% of that, and then if they are missing a good amount of their health, that's another 50% of that. So you would get 1.5x of 311, and then another 1.5x of the new total heal, which could lead up to a pretty naughty heal. And of course, we also have Lunaria, which is at 300. If it is fully capped right here, you can see that the charge limit is 300. So you would also add another 300 at the beginning of that. The heals could lead up to a big number, like a 1k heal. Probably if you have everything stacked up correctly. So the RMB is pretty nuts, and that's why you kind of want to level up second. Finally, let's talk about the Q. The Q is the stun that I kind of showcased earlier. It's basically a pretty long range ability, honestly. There we go. This is about the max range of the stun. It has a bit of a projectile to it. It's pretty slow of a projectile, so you can kind of dodge it if I'm being honest. But more importantly, it also gives you 1 stack on your passive, right? As I mentioned earlier, you do gain more stacks from the Q if you hit more than one enemy. So if there is a Murdoch right here, there's a Kira right here, you Q this, and they also get stunned after the initial person gets stunned, that is going to be 3 stacks. How do they get hit? Well, the Q actually homes towards nearby enemies. The Q will bounce up to 5 times, dealing the same effect, which is going to be a stun. However, the stun will be decreased by 50% of its initial value. So if I stun this guy for what it says is 1.3 seconds, and then it stuns this Murdoch over here, it's gonna stun him for 0.65 seconds, which is gonna be half that value. And then if there's a Kira right here, and she gets bounced to after the Murdoch who was right here, that person will only get stunned for 0.325 seconds, which is half of the stun duration that the Murdoch had. So it's not half of the steal every time, it's half of the last person that was stunned. So if you do stun a 5-man team, the last person you stun is probably gonna be only stunned for 1/10 of a second, but it's still going to cancel an ability if it is an ability that can be cancelled. So worth noting on that. Finally, let's talk about her ultimate. When you hold her ultimate, you have 3 options. You have either an option to confirm or an option to throw it for self. If I just click confirm, it does nothing because I'm not really targeting anyone. Once I target the Muriel, you can see there's basically a visual on the Muriel. This is basically the range, by the way, of the ultimate. And then I click left click, which is the confirm key on the ultimate. It will basically ult the Muriel. However, even if I'm hovering on her and I click right click, I would ult myself. So be careful with that one. Make sure you are ulting the correct person. And you're probably asking, what does the ult do? When a person gets ulted like that, they basically have 4.5 seconds, where if they die, they will get rest within 2.5 seconds of when they're dead. It is worth noting that you will get rest on the location you died. So I'll show you an example right here. I'm going to ult myself. I'm going to take 2 tower shots, and you're going to see me res exactly where I died. It takes 2.5 seconds. There's the animation for it, and you get res right where I died. So even though I can press my ultimate right here, for example, I'll show you another example actually. I'll just take another bit of damage. Get very low for you guys. Let's take one more. Okay, now I ult myself. I ulted over there. I die real quick. And I res right under the tower. I don't res where I clicked it. Does that make sense? Hopefully that makes sense for you guys. But this is basically Zinx kit and a Zinx build guide for you guys. Hopefully you guys find their fun when you get to play her. Lucky for me, I did get the privilege to test her out a bit earlier on. I do have some gameplay as well coming out on Zinx, so yeah, stay tuned for that one. I do think that she can be played elsewhere in other roles as well, but for the build guide, I'm gonna keep it simple and only showcase what she can do in support. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this kind of content. If you do, let me know in the comment section down below. I will see you tomorrow for another Predecessor gameplay video. Peace out, gamers, and have a good one.